Vacation is an interesting experience for me. I'm just not used to it, especially when I miss a Sunday, which I rarely do. But apparently I am regularly gone on the same week each year, because when I look back at all of my sermons for this week, they're all desperate attempts to find something to say after having been gone, or else not present at all because I wisely scheduled a guest preacher for the week I come back. I think I received the best advice I ever gotten from associated with vacation from Father Klein, my rector, when I was in Fort Worth. Always take a vacation in clumps of 3 weeks. It says the first week, you're always worrying about what's going on at where you are. And then that second week, you can just relax and allow the vacation to be what it is. And then the third week, you can ramp up to getting back on the job. He's very wise in this, but I've only ever done this once when Becca was gone for 3 weeks in Italy. Then I was forced to do it. I really enjoyed it, but apparently I'm too stubborn to regularly make this my practice, and my store of sermons bear the marks of this. This sermon every year is rather painstaking for me, pulling something from the recesses of my brain after praying for it to appear out of nowhere. Normally I'm studying over the break, and so it's not like I'm just sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere, not doing anything related to God. Even though I'm not doing this, it still feels like I'm running away like Jonah, refusing to preach to the people given to me. This is kind of what vacation feels like for me. Neglecting my duties as a priest to flee to Tarshish, if I'm honest with myself, which is probably why I take so few Sundays off. I can only imagine what it's going to be like when I actually retire, and when it comes along like it does for Elijah in our Old Testament reading today. When we were in the Episcopal Church, there was a mandatory retirement age. And I don't think this is any sort of ageist type punishment, but rather a pastoral element that forces a priest to take a break from running the parish and to acknowledge that the parish will indeed go on without him. Over the break, while we were driving to and from Wisconsin, I listened to Hamilton over and over and over again as I was driving. And the second act of the musical, George Washington announces to Alexander Hamilton that he is not going to seek another term as president. In a time when there were no limits and there was no term limits, and it was up to the president to determine if he was going to continue to run, George Washington decides that it is in the best interest of the nation that he retires as president. It will teach them that that the nation is bigger than any one president, and it will outlive him after he is gone. Very similar to Elijah and Elisha in the Old Testament today. Elijah knows that it is time for him to move on. Well, he knows it because God told him to replace himself as a prophet. After fleeing in 1 Kings, before we get to today, after fleeing after his success at Mount Carmel, where Elijah, empowered by God, rid the world of 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, the prophets beloved by Jezebel, that is, the wicked queen, she's the wicked queen of Israel, and he is scared to death of her, so he runs away as far as he can. Elijah then flees unbidden to the cave where Moses receives his burning bush encounter with God. This episode in Elijah's career that out of context of why he was there, this portion so many people over history have found comfort in, because this is where we see God speak to Elijah in that still small voice. Elijah inquires of the Lord, and God tells Elijah to wait on his response, and there's a great wind that tore the mountain and shattered rocks, but the Lord was not in the wind. Then there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And then there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And when Elijah hears it, he wraps his face and goes out and stands at the entrance of the cave and encounters the Lord. Sounds like a very lovely experience, a beautiful encounter outside of the context that where it appears. See, because Elijah knows that God's not in the bangs and grand shows of force that we would normally associate with the presence of the Lord, but rather being in that still small voice heard only by Elijah. The problem is with the translation that King James gives us, that still small voice, it's actually a misrepresentation of what's going on here. Elijah understands that it's not in these other grand events, but then this still small voice, which is actually nothing. Elijah hears nothing, and he knows that this is the sign from God that he was told to wait for. And then when he goes out to meet God, God chastises him for being there at all, and not where he placed him, which was back at Mount Carmel, dealing with Ahab and Jezebel. And then God essentially fires Elijah and has him appoint Elisha as his replacement. So when we see Elijah retiring in our Old Testament reading today, it is a forced retirement, but one that Elijah has come to accept and knows that his position will go on after him. He knows that the position of a prophet, the mouthpiece of God to the people, is bigger than any one man, even if that one man is as great as Elijah. In fact, Elijah, as great as he is in the eyes of the people, is actually, as we just saw, just muddling through it as best he can. That which makes him great is not his own abilities, but God who acts through him and who gives him the words to speak. So it will go on as long as God wills it to go on, for he is the one who empowers, and he is the one who gives the words. This is a wonderful reminder to me and to any priest who doesn't like to take vacations because it feels like running away to Tarshish. Because no matter who the person is in the pulpit, or who the person is at the altar, or who the priest is at the altar on Sunday, as long as there's a person willing to stand and preach, even if that person may not be familiar to the congregation, when he speaks, God speaks it through him and says to the people, "Take heart, it is I, have no fear." God shows up, and it is not up to me to make him manifest on any given Sunday. He shows up because he wills to show up. It may be more familiar for me when he shows up when I am here, because I am used to being in the pulpit when he does, or being at the altar and saying the words. But he does not show up because I say the words. He is bigger than me and shows up because he desires to be seen. He shows up in sermons when I prepare all week to give the sermon, or when I lovingly design a liturgy for a special Sunday. He does this not because I do all these things, but because he wills to be there, and I merely facilitate and attempt to make it as pleasing an experience as possible. But he shows up equally in a sermon when I have been on vacation and have had my mind on vacation things, and when I trust in a liturgy that I attempted to make sure was put together weeks ago. For it is not me who causes him to show up at all, but rather it is he who wills to be present, and so he will be present. This is both the beauty and the humility of the priesthood. He shows up whether I want him to or not, because I have no power over him, either to make him present when he does not wish to be present, or to prevent his presence because I wish it. He is God, and I am not. For some reason, he has made it so that he will be present when I preach and when I celebrate Mass, not because he needs me to make it so, but because he has made it such that I am allowed to participate in the making present of him. Had he chosen someone else, I would not be able to do so, but I am thankful that he has so called me to. Hopefully, in the midst of all my ramblings this morning, he has made his presence known to you as well. I am merely reflecting after vacation, but then again, thankfully, his presence depends on him and not me. I am in his presence as well, trying to learn from him in the same way you are. But I am in the strange position of being both mouthpiece of God this morning and the observer of what is being said. It is a strange position to be in, and one that kind of makes my head hurt after a vacation. So maybe I need another vacation. But I do know that if I do go on vacation, that his presence will be made known then as well. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.